Good morning, Year 10, and welcome to a delightful online English lesson focusing on English Language Paper 1. As you can see from the slide, we've got a small plan of action on the left-hand side, or at least what I hope is the left-hand side when you're watching the video. First thing is the assessment dirt. If you go onto Teams, you'll see that I've marked your question 5 assessments and given you some feedback on those. Then we'll be reading a short extract from The Woman in Black. Then we'll have a go at question 1, which, as you know, is only about 5 minutes worth of work, if that. And then we'll focus more of our time on question 2. You can see that I've put some really beautiful pictures of my cats on here because you know I have a concerning obsession with them. Enjoy. I'm going to try and make this a regular feature. Okay, so question 5, dirt. At the top there is a brief reminder of what you actually did, because it was a while ago that you did the task now. So you either wrote a description suggested by that picture, or you wrote the opening part of a story about a dangerous fire. And what I would like you to do is to firstly log on to Teams, and if you can't do this, contact either me or your head of year as soon as possible so that we can make sure that that's organised for you. I'd like you to write down your targets and your marks and what they came out as a grade. So I put an example there. This should probably only take you about 5 minutes. So if you're working in your exercise books, just copy it out. If you are typing, then you can probably just copy and paste. So pause the video now and then come back when you've completed the task. Okay, so what I would like you to do with this information is add to it a little bit more. So obviously I can give you a couple of brief targets, but this process is really about self-reflection and making sure that you know how best you can improve your creative writing. So, the positives. Highlight and label each time you've used a technique. So, simile, metaphor, oxymoron can be juxtaposition. Obviously, structural ones are a little bit more difficult, so maybe you could do a key. Circle each type of different punctuation that you have used as well. You should be all using a wide range of punctuation securely and for effect. Slight negatives. Underline each time you begin a sentence or paragraph with the same word, unless it's for deliberate effect, of course. And draw a box around each sentence that is more than 3 lines long without the correct punctuation. Really, really aware of our writing, making sure that we are crafting it. When you have done that, making sure you meet your targets, rewrite one of your paragraphs. And again, if you're not sure which one to do, just drop me an email and I'm more than happy to help you out. So I would say this should take about 20 minutes. So pause it here and then come back and we'll move on. Okay, so we're moving on to an extract. I know the plan was to move on to paper 2 after Christmas, but given how everything's quite up in the air for this week at least, we're going to continue focusing on paper 1 because you all know what the success criteria is. So this is an extract from a text called The Woman in Black. So it's from the middle of The Woman in Black, not the beginning. Shock horror, I know. It's a novella by Susan Hill, first published in 1983. And in this section, Arthur Kipps, a junior solicitor, is staying overnight in Eel Marsh House in order to sort through some legal papers. The house is supposed to be empty following the death of its elderly and reclusive former inhabitant, Alice Drablow. Now, you needn't stay for me to read it aloud to you. Obviously, you can do that independently, but I'm going to anyway, because why not? You love hearing my dulcet tones. So as we're reading, think about what your initial reactions are. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Would you want to read more? Why? So, The Woman in Black. At first, all seemed very quiet, very still, and I wondered why I'd woken. Then, with a missed heartbeat, I realised that Spider was up and standing at the door. She's a dog. Every hair of her body was on end. Her ears were pricked, her tail erect, the whole of her tense as if ready to spring. And she was emitting a soft, low growl from deep in her throat. I sat up paralysed, frozen in the bed, conscious only of the dog and the prickling of my own skin, and of what suddenly seemed a different kind of silence, ominous and dreadful. And then, from somewhere within the depths of the house, but somewhere not very far from the room I was in, I heard a noise. It was a faint noise, and strain my ears as I might, I could not make out exactly what it was. It was a sound like a regular yet intermittent bump or rumble. Nothing else happened. There were no footsteps, no creaking floorboards. The air was absolutely still. The wind did not moan through the casement. Only the muffled noise went on and the dog continued to stand, bristling at the door, now putting her nose to the gap at the bottom and snuffling along, now taking a pace backwards, head cocked, and like me, listening, and every so often she growled again. In the end, I suppose because nothing else happened and because I did have a dog to take with me, I managed to get out of bed, though I was shaken and my heart beat uncomfortably fast within me. But it took some time for me to find sufficient reserves of courage to enable me to open the bedroom door and stand out in the dark corridor. The moment I did so, Spider shot ahead, and I heard her padding about, sniffing intently at every closed door, still growling and grumbling down in her throat. After a while, I heard the odd sound again. It seemed to be coming from along the passage to my left at the very far end, but it was still quite impossible to identify. Very cautiously, listening, hardly breathing, I ventured a few steps in that direction. Spider went ahead of me. The passage led only to 3 other bedrooms on either side, and one by one, regaining my nerve as I went, I opened them and looked inside each one. Nothing, only old heavy furniture and empty unmade beds, and in the rooms at the back of the house, moonlight. Down below me on the ground floor of a house, silence, a seething, blanketing, almost tangible silence, and a musty darkness, thick as felt. And then I reached the door at the very end of the passage. Spider was there before me, and her body as she sniffed beneath it went rigid, her growling grew louder. I put my hand on her collar, stroked the rough short hair, as much for my own reassurance as for hers. I could feel the tension in her limbs and body as it answered to my own. This was the door without a keyhole, which I'd been unable to open on my first visit to Ilmarsh House. I had no idea what was beyond it, except the sound. It was coming from within that room, not very loud, but just a hand on the other side of that single wooden partition. It was a sound of something bumping gently on the floor, in a rhythmic sort of way, a familiar sound, and yet one I still could not exactly place, a sound that seemed to belong to my past, to waken old half-forgotten memories and associations deep within me, a sound that in any other place would not have made me afraid, but would, I thought, have been curiously comforting, friendly. But at my feet, the dog Spider began to whine, a thin, pitiful, frightened moan, and to back away from the door a little and press against my legs. My throat felt constricted and dry, and I had begun to shiver. There was something in that room that I could not get to it, nor would I dare to if I were able. I told myself it was a rat or a trapped bird, fallen down the chimney into the hearth and unable to get out again. But the sound was not of some small panic-stricken creature. Bump, bump, pause. Bump, bump, pause. Bump, 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 bump. Ooh, think about your initial reactions. You don't have to write them down, but just pause it. Think about what we've just read. You might want to take this time to reread it again independently. So just a couple of minutes and then come back. Okay, question 1, nice and easy. So read the first part of the source, lines 1 to 4. Make sure you always read the line numbers because you will not get credited if you talk about elsewhere in the text. All you need to do is write down 4 things from this part of the source about the dog Spider and her behaviour. 5 minutes, although I doubt you'll even need to. Write that down in your books, please. Go. Okay. Question 2 is this, and I would like you to write question 2 into your exercise books or whichever platform you're working on. How does the writer use language here to describe the atmosphere when Arthur Kipps wakes up? And as you know, question 2 is worth 8 marks. It might be handy here to quickly flick back through your exercise books and check which features count as language, because I think sometimes we get a bit confused between language and structure. So, because I'm a delight, on the left-hand side, I've kind of highlighted some of the features that you could talk about in red. So this is just a starting point. But as you know, as you all know because you love English language so much, we've done quite a lot of question 2. So I'm not going to talk you through this too much. My advice for you, since we don't need to be in timed conditions and we've got the time to practice this, would be to select several quotes to focus on. I would write them down or type them up and explode them. So really thinking about the connotations of particular words, what methods the writer's using, how it creates that effect, how it contributes to that kind of sinister, ominous, uncomfortable atmosphere that's created. Once you've done that, give yourself 10 minutes to write your response. It doesn't need to be perfect. I've put some sentence starters on the slide, but you needn't use them. It's just if you're kind of struggling to get back into the lockdown working routine. So feel free to use them if you would like to. I've said 15 minutes as a guide. It might take you a slightly longer, it might take you a bit less time. So pause the video here and then come back when you're done. Okay, so final thing, and a delightful picture of the cats once more. Please can you submit this piece of work via assignments on Teams? I'm going to do what we talked about before, which was doing an assignment per question because it's quicker for me to turn around marking wise. I don't know if you're aware, but I am in mini school for the duration of lockdown, so I may be able to make your lessons, I may not, but if I'm not, I'm not ignoring you, and I will email you as soon as I get an opportunity. So things to upload today, question 5 dirt work and question 2 from today, so that I can give you some feedback at some point. Shouldn't take you too long. And hopefully I might see some of you on Thursday at Parents' Evening. But for now, have an absolutely lovely day. Please do get in touch if you're struggling, and take care.